Welcome. I'm Alice Alicia Jones, and this is another one of my Living Consciously videos. I apologize, I'm 46 minutes late. I was in McLean, couldn't get home fast enough, and so here I am. When I asked my guides what it was I was supposed to cover today, the answer didn't come right away. But eventually, what happened was that the answer that did arrive was you are on the cusp of defending the freedom of speech portion of your Constitution. Encourage it in every single aspect that you can. And so I thought about this and I realized that even though I cannot participate tomorrow because I'm teaching 2 classes, there is an enormous nationwide speech protest that is taking place tomorrow across the country, the No Kings Act. And then I thought about what has happened to our country in the interim of this past year. And I realized that, yes, in every respect, the First Amendment has been challenged. Freedom of speech. We were given the right to have complete freedom of speech in our Constitution by the First Amendment. We have one of the greatest constitutions that has ever been written in history. And as we look at it, we recognize that even though the Constitution was written by a group of very wise men, there was a chink in the armor, and that chink was that they were slaveholders. So the desire that was stated in the Declaration of Independence for life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness extended only to whites. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is an inalienable right of ours by virtue of the fact that we have come to planet Earth. The countries that promote it are going to thrive. The countries that don't promote it will disappear. We're on the cusp of it. The giants who have led us to this point, I'm going to start with George Washington, obviously the leader of the American Revolution, or the general that led the American Revolution. So much has been said about him, but the most important thing that when it came time to establish a government, had he wanted to be king, he would have been. He could have chosen that role for himself, but he chose not to. We now know that anybody who desires to have kingship put on themselves is not going to be given a path to that through the desires of the people who are governed by our Constitution. The next great person that I want to emulate and talk about is Abraham Lincoln. Interestingly enough, I just came from a trip to Alaska, And there was a totem pole where Abraham Lincoln was the only figure carved on that totem pole. And it's very unmistakably his visage. And the beauty is that why Alaskans pay tribute to Abraham Lincoln was that his I believe it was his Secretary of State, Seward, who pushed for the purchase of Alaska. And I'm pretty sure that he got it for like 3 cents an acre. It was an incredibly low price and he paid the Russians for it who had occupied it. And for the longest time, it was called Seward's Folly. And that reason was because of the fact that people laughed and said, what do we want Alaska for? Before they discovered gold, before they discovered oil, before they discovered the natural resources that Alaska holds. And I think there's a lot more to be discovered. Abraham Lincoln, with his Emancipation Proclamation, freed an entire nation of Black people who had been enslaved by us, the white people that occupied a lot of North America, a lot of the United States, but mainly the southern portion, because they were dependent on slave labor to give to get the profit that they wanted from the product that they felt was king, which was cotton, and also the tobacco harvest that they promoted. So we needed to eventually address that issue. It wasn't addressed at the time of the Declaration of Independence. It wasn't addressed at the time of the framing of the Constitution, because the founders knew that should they push the issue of no slavery, that there would be no United States of America, because each state had the right to declare, was it a free state or a slave state? And they knew what the outcome of that was. The next person that I wanted to bring forward was Martin Luther King. In his ability to gather 1 million poor people to the District of Columbia, to the mall. And if you haven't seen it, the picture of, and I know I don't have a share screen, but this is the picture of the mall, of the people that gathered to listen to his speech about the civil rights movement. This is obviously when JFK was still alive and civil rights had been fermenting for a much greater push towards civil rights was fermenting. And Martin Luther King was able to get 1 million people to come to the mall, even the poorest of the poor. They were somehow or other, they found funding to get the people here and to get them home. And it was a peaceful demonstration. Martin Luther King stood on the shoulders of Gandhi. Gandhi was able, through peaceful protest, peaceful marches, was able to collaborate the efforts of 300 million people in India to get rid of the oppressive British regime that was keeping them into giving them a second class citizen role. So these are the giants of the Peace March. But I also want to include Lyndon Baines Johnson, because I truly believe that there's probably no other person that had the strength of power, sheer, raw, unadulterated power to coerce his colleagues into passing the civil rights legislation that he knew had to be passed in order to put some muscle and some teeth into the civil rights movement. What happens tomorrow is going to be another demonstration of a civic right that we have for peaceful demonstrations, or as John Lewis said it, good trouble. They do not anticipate any trouble at all. They anticipate millions and millions of people from coast to coast, from north to south, to come in and demonstrate in the protest march on Saturday, October 18th, which I believe will go down in history as the largest protest across the United States. I encourage you, if you don't have plans to do anything else that you feel you have to do, I encourage you to find the locale of where somebody is marching, wherever you are, whatever city you're in, whatever state you're in, wherever you are, and I encourage you to march. I will be there in spirit. Had I known months ago that this was the date, I would have altered my teaching schedule. But it didn't make a dent on me until it was too late to change the schedule. I just I feel so blessed to know that I live in a country where I can make my views known, and people have the right to accept, reject, whatever that they want to do, but that I have the right to state my views without fear of retribution. My son, when he was 12, gave me a statement that was based on Voltaire. And he said, "Mom, I may disagree with what it is that you say, but I will defend your right to say it with my life." I thought for a 12-year-old, that was pretty astute. And like I said, that's shades of Voltaire, but he coincidentally became a philosophy major when he was in college. So he was just so well suited because he was a very deep thinker, and he was so well suited for that. And he's been a person who was always willing to give another person a chance. It didn't matter whether they were in drug rehabilitation. It didn't matter where they had been jailed. If they paid their debt to society, he was willing to give them a chance in the work that he established in New York. So I thank you, I bless you, and I am hoping to have sometime after the classes that I have to look at the uh, across the country of what happens tomorrow. Keep marching on. That's all I can say. Keep marching on. Thank you for being here.